Well, hello, and welcome to the Gold Zone Leadership Center session on mastering your emotions, good stress, bad stress, and burnout. My name is Harrison, and I am one of your hosts for today's session. Joining me here is Victoria. Welcome, Victoria. Victoria is
Hi,
the
everyone.
CEO. Thank you, Victoria. Victoria is the CEO of Gold Zone Group. I'm the co-founder of the Gold Zone organization. We have a leadership center, wellness center, medical clinic. We also have technology company, investment company. So we have a few members of the Gold Zone Group, and our focus is on leadership. And whenever we work with leaders, we always run into similar problems. How about that? Similar problems indeed. So I'd like to welcome you here. Thank you for joining us on a Tuesday. No, it's Wednesday in Singapore. It is Valentine's Day. So let's see if we can bring some love into the session. Let's see if we can do it. Can we do it? Can we do it? Yes, we can. Some love for Valentine's Day. So, Victoria, over to you.
Hey, welcome, everyone. Yes, happy Valentine's Day. And I was thinking it's interesting that we're going to talk about stress today. And at the same time, it's Valentine's Day. So, what do we talk about? Love or stress? So, yeah, it's good to have you join us. And just want to let you know this is quite a free flow session. We're going to discuss about emotion, the various type of stress. And feel free to comment, ask question on the chat stream. And we are happy to address anything that can come up during the process. And of course, we have prepared some a few slides here and there, but not a lot. So it really is more interactive and more dynamic and personalized session for those of you who are really interested in transforming your stress and use stress as a good leverage to achieve your goal this year. How about that? What do you think, Harrison?
Sounds like a good idea to me. How to use stress to achieve your goal for this year. That's an
Yeah,
interesting question. How do we do that? How do we use stress to reach our goal this year? What do you think?
good question. What I think, first of all, we got to address the myth of stress because, as you know, talking to so many people and hearing, in a lot of our discussion and of course on social media and the news outlet, right? These days we talk about mental health a lot. It's being discussed quite openly, and I personally feel that there's a lot of misunderstanding around stress, and that stress are being deemed as bad. And not understanding stress can make it hard for us to deal with it and cope with it in a healthier way where it's more sustainable. Because I think, in my experience, avoiding stress is not the solution. And a lot of the solution that most people talk about, or we talk, or most of solution that I hear are mostly more band-aid solution, and it doesn't really address the root cause of the stress.
Why would you want to address the root cause of the stress? Surely, if you put a band aid on it, it's going to heal on its own, isn't it? Isn't stress going to go away if we go and walk in the park, go to the gym, take out our frustration on the exercise equipment, kick the dog? Oh, sorry. Leave the dog alone, yell at someone.
Cat, black cat, kick the black cat.
Yeah. So surely if we do these things that most people do, we hear about mindfulness all the time, we meditate, we try and let it go, we find someone to talk to. Why don't these things work? Are they getting to the root cause, Victoria?
No, they are not getting to the root cause.
How do you know it's not getting to the root cause? Because surely
Well,
the reason that I'm feeling stressed is because I'm taking things too personally. I'm emotionally invested and my mind's going a million miles an hour. Anyone can relate to this here in the session. Your mind's going a million miles an hour and you're worried about what the outcomes can be. So when you meditate, you calm down and your mind quietens and then you can let it go. Isn't that the real problem there?
well, the problem with that is it can I know that can help in a temporary management of the stress, but the problem is that it's not sustainable. it can help me in the moment manage the situation. But in the long term, if I don't deal with the root cause of the real reason why I have the stress in the first place, is going to keep coming back. So then what? I got to be disciplined in trying to do my whatever mindfulness, or it's not that mindfulness is not good. I'm just saying that it doesn't help solve the real reason why the stress is there in the first place.
Right. So that brings us to what we're going to talk about today. We're going to look at stress from a different point of view. A lot of people are familiar with mental health. We're going to talk about emotional health and how it differs from mental health, and how to master your emotions. If you think it's a mental issue, then mastering your emotions is going to be real tough because because our emotion is something that we feel, whereas our thinking is up here. We think up here, but we feel in our body. So when we're feeling stressed, are we thinking stress or are we feeling stress? Well, for most of us, we are feeling it. But there is also some thinking stress that happens, and we're going to discuss the different types of stress, because there are 4 different kinds of stress, and most people only think of good or bad stress, mostly bad, and they're not aware of what is good stress and how we can harness that to have more of what we want. And then what are these other types of stress? Why is it an emotional issue, not a mental one? And why do Band-Aids not work? And how do we get to the root cause of it and have a transformation in how we handle stress so we can handle more pressure? Which reminds me of the Super Bowl that we watched on Monday morning, Singapore time. And I don't know, anyone else here watch the Super Bowl? Can you put in the chat? Did you watch the Super Bowl? I love watching the Super Bowl. At least once a year, I tune in to the American football. It is the most fun spectacle for the halftime show and the ads and watching the teams and then picking who's going to be the winner. Sadly, I picked the loser. I picked the San Francisco 49ers. But, you know, I'm not American. Victoria's not American, but we were up early watching the pregame show, listening to the interviews, learning about the athletes, watching them getting ready, watching them go on the field and talk about stress. These guys were under tremendous amounts of stress. And you could see it. You could see it, right? It played out right in front of us.
Yep. Well, the interesting thing is that one of the meme picture, for those of you who actually watched the Super Bowl, was what's his name? Kelsey, 87, from the winning team. And he was so under stress that this meme picture showed him screaming at his coach. But I'm not sure what he was screaming about. It became a meme. It's all over the internet right now. Well, he's Taylor Swift boyfriend. So in case you guys don't know him.
Victoria, he wanted to get the ball more often so he could run with it.
Oh, I see.
So he had an emotional outburst at the coach, and you saw the coach take a couple of steps back. It was pretty intense.
Yes. Well, I think that's a good visual and image of someone who is under extreme stress. Clearly, he was very into the winning, which I can understand. This is their 3rd time defending champion. And it's very stressful. I feel stressed on their behalf watching it. And I'm not even a fan of football. I'm not a fan of American football, but the whole thing was quite interesting to watch.
Well, the real question, Victoria, is after watching this show on Monday morning, Sunday US time, do you want to watch it again next year?
Actually, yes, I do.
So then it must have been good enough, huh?
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit of adrenaline rush, right? And of course, you know, I guessed the winning team. Correct. And
Yes,
they
you
won
did.
at the last 30 second too. I say, oh my God, they are going to win last 30 second. And I guess this, yes.
Yes, go on.
I wanted to say that, how does that relate to, you know, winning at our game this year? Since we talk about stress, we talk about winning, we talk about Super Bowl, which is one of the biggest event, it's the biggest event in America. Watch the game highlights. Yep.
And so how does this relate to stress? Shall we dive
Yes.
in and talk about the different types of stress, Victoria?
Yep.
Okay, perhaps I'll give a bit of an overview and then we can go back and forth. Before we do, can we check in with everybody? If you're able to put in the chat where you are joining us from. If you're
Yeah,
from
that'd be
Singapore, please type in Singapore. If you're from Australia, type Australia. If you do that for us in the chat, then we know where you are coming from. The chat doesn't seem to be in real time, eh?
no. It's a
So we
little
have
bit.
this issue of delayed chat. So I guess we'll just keep going, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, Alex, hello from Singapore. Welcome. Good to see you.
Hello, hello.
One is from Australia. Good to see you too. Dr. Marion is from Singapore. Welcome, welcome. Someone's from Canberra, Australia.
David.
David, welcome.
Welcome.
Yeah, Alex says there is a bit of a lag there.
Yes.
I think there's a bit of a lag from when we say things to when people type things, but never mind. The funny thing is, today we're talking about stress, and leading up to this session, we had a little bit of technical stress, which is quite common.
Yes. Whew.
Yeah. So, Victoria, let's dive in and upfront talk about what stress is, how it works, and the different kinds of stress, shall we?
Yes. Let's do it.
Alrighty. All right. Give me a moment to put some slides up
While
here.
you're doing that, I would like to ask a question to everyone. What is the one problem or one result that you would like to see? Well, one problem you'd like to solve, or one result you would like to see if you can solve this stress problem. Because I think stress is part and parcel of our life. And if you are willing, please type it on the chat. What is the one problem that you would like to solve, or one result you would like to get from solving the stress issue?
Victoria, what are some of the problems relating to stress that people see? Obviously you can feel it. It's something that you feel stressed and your blood pressure goes up, your body temperature goes up, your heart rate goes up.
Impatient, irritable,
You become
annoying.
impatient. Okay, you become irritable. What else?
You feel like, well, I feel like lashing on people when I'm not able to handle my stress.
So people will become short-tempered, irritable, and will take it out on people nearby.
Yeah.
So they develop funnel vision like this.
Oh,
Tunnel
yeah.
vision, I should say. Tunnel vision.
No vision. Yeah. You can't see it. Oh, and you can't, everything is negative when you're stressed. You can't.
Everything looks negative when you're
Yeah.
stressed.
Correct. And the problem looks unsolvable. Whatever problem I'm facing in that moment, it looks unsolvable.
Right. So if it looks unsolvable when you're stressed, does that mean that if you try and solve the root cause of stress while you're feeling stressed, then you're not going to be able to solve it, are you?
No, you need to get out of your stress mode. As in, need to get out of that feeling that well, I don't even know which is causing what, because is the feeling causing the stress, or the stress is causing the feeling?
I think it goes into a negative loop where it works both ways.
Yes.
The negative feeling reinforces the stress, and the stress reinforces the negative feeling.
Yeah. And I think on an extreme case, people go into panic, they can't think properly, and they feel really depressed and they can't get out of it.
Yes. So let's do this. I'm going to put some slides up and walk through the different types of stress and how it works, and then we'll discuss it. Can?
Sounds great.
All righty. All right. Just a moment. So there are 4 kinds of stress that I mentioned before. What are they? Obviously, there's negative stress. There's positive stress. That's 2. There's anticipatory stress, and here they are here. There's anticipatory stress, acute stress, which is short term, where you feel it just for a short period. And chronic stress is when the stress goes on over a long...
Oh,
Yep, something fell down, where it goes on for a long period of time and it becomes chronic. And the problem with chronic stress is that we adjust to it and it becomes normal to us and we don't recognize that it is there. It becomes the new normal. And then there's eustress, which is positive stress. And a lot of people are familiar with the negative side, but not so much with the positive side. But let's walk through why this is such a big deal. Going back, anticipatory stress, number 1, why it's negative is when you think about an event that is coming up, and when this event is getting closer and closer, you anticipate a negative outcome, you feel more and more stress. So what is the feeling that you're having when you're anticipating that negative outcome? You would say that it is fear. So you're having fear at the anticipation of having an outcome that you don't want. And the more you don't want that outcome, the more fear that you're going to feel. So your fear escalates the more you think about it. And often this is called ruminating. So we will ruminate over this particular fear. And maybe it's related to your work performance, a meeting that you have, a presentation that you have, a LinkedIn live event. Maybe it's a conversation with an important customer. Maybe you're applying for a mortgage. Maybe you're buying a new car and you're thinking about all the things that can go wrong. So this is anticipatory stress, and this is negative. There's nothing good that comes out of it other than it alerts you to a possible danger. The second kind is an acute stressor. Let's say that something happened that's a one-off event and you find it stressful. You didn't expect it to happen, but when it happens, you feel the stress, and then when the event is over, your response calms down and you return back to normal. So with this one, it's acute, so it's a one-off, and then you go back to normal. Number 3, the chronic one, how this happens is that when you have acute stress that goes on, and it's the same stressor that is supposed to be a one-off, but it goes on every day over a period of time. It could be every day, it could be every week, but it repeats. Then what happens is that our system adjusts to the stress, and our system gets used to the different level of hormones that are running around in response to that danger. So then we get used to it, and over time we don't realize that we're under such a high level of stress because we've adjusted to it. And you might think, hey, that's an increase in capacity. But how much capacity do you actually have? And I have a diagram for you that I'm going to show you in a minute. Actually, I'll show you now. What happens over time, here it is here, if you take a look at this. Your normal level of stress, you can see, let me get my pointer going. Down here, your normal level of stress, you go up and down like this, and you return to normal. But what happens with chronic stress is that your system adjusts to it, and your set point goes up, and now your new level is up here. This is your new set point. And this is why chronic stress is so destructive, because this resetting of your set point happens without you even knowing it. So you're not necessarily aware that you're on this new set point. It seems like you're coping well, but underneath the hood, so to speak, what's happening is that your system is having a whole lot of extra hormones to cope, and you don't realize it. Now, how this shows up in everyday life is that for a lot of people, they end up with chronic hypertension. And this is what chronic hypertension looks like. They end up with chronic levels of high blood sugar. And this is what it looks like. Now, when your blood sugar goes up and stays there and your system adjusts to it, do you notice? No, you don't notice. You don't notice that that's happened. But what happens inside, if you were to test it on an ongoing basis, like using a continuous glucose monitor, you would be able to tell that your set point has gone high. Now, without getting too technical here, there's a counteracting hormone to blood glucose, which is insulin. So when your blood glucose goes high, your insulin goes up to bring down your blood glucose level. And over time, your insulin works less and less effectively, which is why these set points are such a big deal. So what we have in most developed world environments is we have a chronic level of stress leading to chronic levels of hypertension and chronic levels of blood sugar. So this leads to diabetes, heart disease, and all kinds of nasties that we don't want, that a lot of people don't know how to fix them. And what we turn to in many instances is we turn to medication. But if, like Victoria said in the beginning, if we don't deal with the root cause of the stress, because the stress is what's driving the hypertension, the stress is what's driving the high levels of blood sugar, the stress is the real cause. Now, what happens when our blood sugar is high for too long? We end up using a different kind of fuel source than our body thrives on. We end up being hungry for energy. So we need energy. And what happens when our blood sugar goes really high? What's the next thing that happens, Victoria?
Crash.
So very high blood sugar is followed by a crash that takes it very low. So when it crashes, how do you feel?
You know, interestingly, when we use the blood glucose monitor to, like, I don't have diabetes, but I use that to understand my food, how it impacts me and all that. I thought that I will feel tired and well, essentially how most people would describe it is food coma when it crashes. But in my case, I noticed I started to feel tired as it goes up. Not as it comes down, as it goes up. I thought that was very interesting. I could feel it, but without the data, I might have some feeling, but I won't be able to know. I can only make up, the reason why I was feeling the way I was feeling.
So what you're saying is when your blood sugar goes really high and it peaks, you feel tired as it's going up.
Yes, as it's going, yeah, especially when it's going really high up.
Other people, what they will do is they will feel when it bottoms out, when it crashes down, then they're going to feel tired. Then they're going to feel cranky. Then they're going to have less resilience. And what do we like to do in the mid-afternoon to handle this blood sugar low?
A few things, snacks or nap.
So we like to take a nap in the afternoon, and we also like to have high sugar energy drinks. We like to have high sugar foods, carbohydrates, simple carbohydrates. Now, why are we talking about food when it comes to stress? Because what happens is the more stressed we are, the more stressed we feel, we crave for high energy foods and comfort foods. So we crave for the two of them. One is high energy food and the other one is a comfort food. So the comfort food has us feeling better because it reminds us of a time in our life when we enjoyed having this food, and it has us with that feeling of calm, relaxed, connection, intimacy. For example, for me, my comfort food would be French fries or chips. I love to eat fish and chips because it's a comfort food. Another one is a grilled cheese sandwich. For other people, it might be Hokkien mee.
That's me. That's me.
If I eat Hokkien mee, my blood sugar doesn't spike. But if Victoria does, her blood sugar will spike because that's her comfort food. And the interesting thing is, if she eats a cheese sandwich, which she doesn't like cheese sandwich, but if she has fish and chips, her blood sugar won't spike as much as mine. So what happens is that my system has adjusted to this kind of food, and it's very sensitive to it. So what happens when our blood sugar goes out of whack is that we become cranky, fixated, and narrow-minded. And then the part of our brain that is to do with vision and planning and problem solving is this prefrontal cortex. And unfortunately, when we're under stress, this part shuts down. So our thinking CEO, that's what this is, the CEO of the brain, the prefrontal cortex shuts down. We don't have access to it. Then we can't solve the problem. We just go into fight or flight reaction mode. And this causes the problem to get worse. And then we never really solve it, because every time we medicate the problem with food, we hit the roller coaster, which keeps us on the roller coaster. We can't get off it. So not only does the problem itself cause the stress, but how we cope with it can exaggerate it, aggravate it, make it worse, and make it very difficult to get off. So it's not possible to talk about stress, Victoria, if we don't talk about food and how we cope.
Well, food is a comfort thing for most of us, and it brings up emotion. It brings a lot of great memories and or whatever connection we have through the food that we're eating. That's why it's a very tough subject. It's one of the toughest for people to make changes with.
You're saying the food is one of the toughest things to make changes with?
Mm-hmm.
And
it's not easy.
Is that because it's so connected to our stress management?
Yep.
So then if we want to make changes to our food, our nutrition, then we have to look a little deeper to how we can do it in a way that gets us off the roller coaster, but provides us with what we need.
Yes.
And I think, Victoria, this comes down to energy management, because emotion is actually about energy.
Yes.
And when we react to negative stress, anticipatory, acute, or chronic, it's our emotion is the thing that trips us up. And that's why this is called mastering your emotion. Good stress, bad stress, and burnout. Because what happens in this diagram that I showed earlier, you can see, I'll put it back, Victoria, so we can go back to it. This one here, you can see that what happens here is that over time, burnout is what the result is going to be from this. So this new set point becomes here, and then it continues to escalate like this, and the new set point now becomes here. This is the new set point. And eventually the body can't cope anymore, and we're going to burn out.
Well, that's why our lifestyle disease doesn't happen overnight. It happened over a long period of time. And when our body can't handle it anymore, they just go kaboom. And it looks sudden, but it's not sudden. It's just that we are not. If we are too numb to how our body, how we feel about our body, then we won't notice it. Most people don't notice.
Yes. So if we're numb, Victoria, what do we do? If we become numb to this, what are we going to do?
Unnumb yourself. Is there such a word? Start to feel something.
You mean we have to reconnect with our emotion?
With your emotion, yes, correct. Because if not, it's going to catch us by surprise. And I think the other problem is the conventional wisdom where, oh, you're having this problem because you're getting old. No, it's not because you're getting old.
So you're saying that people think that they're having these issues as they're aging, that it's an age-related issue. It's not so much that it's a cumulative effect over a long period of time.
Yes. And of course, we can't take away our biological clock ticking and our body, our physical health degenerating. I'm not talking about that. But why is it that some people get it earlier than other people? That's the difference, right?
And isn't it when they study long-living people who stay in good health and good fitness and good levels of resilience, you know, they have lived a certain way, and you can see how they've managed their stress, and we can learn a lot from that. That we can apply in our regular life. Because isn't it like very stressful, just the process of getting up, going to work, how we travel to work, then what we're expected to do at work, the kind of relationships we have there, and then this factory model. No wonder that people are so happy working from home. But then a lot of people's home environment is also stressful because then you've got the kids running around, you don't have your set workplace, so there's other issues that complicate it.
Yep.
Yeah, now you're laughing.
Because it's true. It's like either way you can't escape from the different stress. The question is what do we do with it? What can we make? What changes can we make to, or what can we learn to manage it so that it's sustainable?
So let me ask you, why do so many people have a negative connotation with emotion? Because when people start to cry, they say, I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional. So getting emotional is something that you have to apologize for. So most emotions tend to be labeled negative. Do you all find that?
Yeah.
That when you talk about getting emotional, that it's actually talking about something negative, that if you're going to cry, tear, what about tears of happiness? You got to apologize for that. Why do we have to apologize for having emotion? And I think what happens is that the language of emotion is very different from the regular language that we use mentally to describe things. So people are used to language that describes things rationally, but then emotion follows a different set of rules. And have you ever had a conversation with someone, maybe in a relationship with someone, whether it's a relationship with a boss or a colleague or someone at home, where you explain things rationally, but you don't seem to be communicating? They seem to be talking apples and you're talking oranges. And the more you talk, the more upset the other party gets. How many of you notice that? And what is it that causes that? Because if we're going to have good relations, it involves emotion and understanding how the other people feel. How they feel internally might be different from what they're saying. So they'll say one thing, but actually mean another. So emotional intelligence and mastering our emotions means that we have to be a master of what emotions we are seeing in others. And then how do we do that if we don't know what emotions we're having ourselves? So surely learning about emotion is going to be a critical aspect of stress, since stress is emotional by nature.
Agree. And I think the other reason why we associate emotion to emotional being negative is most people will say that, that's what a lot of people will say about women. Why are you getting emotional? And when we say that, it's associated to some kind of craziness or some kind of unstable condition that someone is getting emotional. And I think even the term is off. The term emotional is not what it actually means. It's what people think it is.
Yeah, I'd like to show a diagram I have here of what happens when you meet a grizzly bear. Because the purpose of emotion is actually the interface between our thinking and our doing. So the thinking part of us is the part that does the planning, that thinks about the future, that thinks about the past. And our doing is when we're physically doing something. And the interface between the thinking self and the doing self is emotion. And I like to talk about emotion as energy in motion. And let's look at what happens when we meet a bear. And many of us have not met a bear in real life, but the bears have been replaced by bosses, by colleagues, by clients. So let's take a look at this bear effect, shall we? Here we go. So here's a bear. This is Bear Grylls, the guy from Discovery Channel who goes out and does all these crazy wild things. And look at the size of this bear. So a bear represents some threat or some danger. So our emotion is connected to our survival. So we know about our survival mode when we're worried at that level that we're instinctually taken over, the fight or flight. But what does the mechanism look like when we encounter this bear? Have a look at this. Let me just move myself over to the other side. So in the beginning, when we first encounter the bear, this guy looked pretty scary, right? So what's the first reaction we're going to have in response to seeing a bear or seeing the threat is fear. So we're going to react with fear. Now, when we feel that fear, our instinct has us wanting to run away. And to a predator, any animal they encounter who runs away from them looks like what? Lunch. So if you run into a lion on the plains of Africa and the lion sees you and you're looking at the lion, every part of your body is going to want to run away. And
Madagascar.
when you do run away, that lion is going to pounce on you.
It reminds me of a Madagascar where the lion was looking at everyone looks like meat in front of him.
Yes.
I can't remember his name, the lion's name.
Yes, it's exactly like that. So when we're in the office or at home and we have some threat, we are going to instinctually want to either run away, that's run away like this, or we're going to want to fight in this direction. So fight or flight is common to this situation, and most people think of the fight or flight mode, and there are other parts of it that most people don't think about. So how it works is that if you freeze with a bear, you're more likely to survive it. If you fight, depending on the situation and the bear, you may be able to get the bear off you, but maybe not. But if you consider with your boss, if your boss or your client or your shareholder or your CEO, if they are the threat, what are you going to do? Normally, you're going to keep quiet. But let's look at the stages of what happened with the bear. So if you give in to the bear and you don't fight it, and the bear starts to chew on you, you're going to feel emotionally the feeling of loss. So you're going to go from fear to loss, and you're going to worry and think mentally, oh, maybe I'm going to lose here, maybe I'm going to die. And then your next emotion is that you go through a stage of numb, loss, grief, sadness, and it happens very quickly. But this is what happens when you have a situation in the office and you're going to lose a deal, or you're going to lose your job, or you're going to lose something. So then right before you're dead, you're nearly dead, and then you're dead. So that's the end of the story. So we don't want to go that way. If we go in the other direction, when we're afraid of something, the other response is to feel angry. So when we feel angry, we want to fight. We want to push back. We want to raise our voice. We get aggressive. We take aggressive moves. So if we fight and we lose, then we go back to fear, back to loss, and we descend down this emotional scale. But if we fight and we win, then we're going to feel more enthusiasm, we're going to feel more passion, and we're going to feel more fully alive. So how this applies to stress is that anytime we encounter a bear, we are going to feel stressed. And it's our choice how we cope with it. Now, a lot of people might think that getting angry and fighting might not be the best move given the circumstances, but does giving in and pulling back and running away, how many of you have solved your problems long-term by avoiding them? By pretending they're not there, by sweeping them under the carpet, by knowing that that person in the corner office is the one that is threatening you all the time. So what you do is you avoid the corner office, and then what happens is you go down the spiral of emotion like this. So in order to have the higher levels of emotion, enthusiasm, passion, joy, and to feel fully alive, we have to deal with the real problems. And if there's a power differential between us and the bear, we need to equalize that somehow, right? So cowering, running away, pulling back, playing small, taking on less challenges doesn't work, because what happens is we have the negative emotions that go along with that, but we miss out on all the positive ones. And here's another way to look at it. If you look at this diagram here, this explains the same thing from a different point of view. So what you have on this axis on the bottom, you have a low number of problems, your goals are small, your vision is small, you have less stress, this is the lower level, and the risk of having too little stress, too little problems, is that we become bored and depressed. That's down here when the problems are too small. On the other hand, if the problems are too great and we don't feel that we can cope and the goal is too big, we don't think we're going to make it, and the stress is too severe for too long, then we have this complete meltdown. And so on one hand, we have too much stress, and on the other, we have too little. So too little, we're bored. Too much, we're in a meltdown. And bouncing between the two would make us look manic, right? High, low, high, low, high, low.
According to most people, it's emotional.
Yeah, this makes you look emotional, right? So what happens when we get our level of stress and our capability up into this zone here? This is the optimal performance zone, the freedom zone, or being in the zone is where the goals are big enough to challenge us. We increase our capability to handle them. The vision is drawing us forward, but the challenge is not too overwhelming. And I think this is where the bears are manageable and we have something to counterbalance the power differential between us and the bear. So how's that look to you, Victoria?
Meaning, how does this picture look to me?
Yeah.
Well, I like this. I like this graph because I think it's a great way to demonstrate why having some form of stress is actually very important. It moves us, but then over having extreme stress is going to cause a meltdown. And people who are bored and depressed, could it be because they don't have enough goal, they don't have enough dream, they don't have enough thing to work towards? Every day is like a humdrum. And I'm sorry to say, if you feel like you're a walking zombie, maybe you don't have enough stress. Well, good stress, I mean, stress that grow you, stress that help you to make you happier.
Yes. So how do we tap this positive stress, the eustress here? How do we get into that? What is it? It's by having goals, dreams, and visions. So we have a vision of the future that we are creating, and we pull the energy of the vision, the positive emotion of achieving that vision, of realizing it in the physical, we bring that into the present. And that creates a gap between where we are versus where we want to be. And that gap is what's called eustress. It's positive stress. So there's a positive gap. A negative gap is where we have an expectation of an outcome that we're not getting in the present time, and we don't see how we're going to fix that, how we're going to solve it. And so we cope with this unsolved problem by pretending it's not important, by giving up on our dreams, by giving up on our goals, by playing smaller, by drawing back from any situation that's going to be risky or a compromise. These are some of the ways that we cope with it. Playing small is probably the easiest way to describe it. So to tap the power of eustress, we have to have goals, dreams, and visions that we don't know how we're going to achieve. And this is important because, Victoria, a lot of people, they set a goal that they know how to achieve. It's like a small incremental goal, rather than a huge goal that is going to be big, it's going to be scary, it's going to be audacious, it's going to be bold, and they don't know how they're going to fulfill it. That stress that comes from having this giant, enormous goal, that stress is positive because you're trying to solve this gap for creating something that you want in the future. And, if you shoot for the stars and you miss, maybe you land on the moon, it's still not so bad, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so when you're dealing with a lot of CEOs and professionals and business owners, Victoria, isn't this a problem for a lot of people? How they cope with those negative levels of stress is by reducing the size of their goals and their dreams. And so they'll settle for a team that isn't really aligned but gets the basic job done. They are functioning and they're making money, but they're not doing anything extraordinary. And
Yeah,
then anything that upsets the apple cart can seem stressful.
yeah. Well, a lot of
Versus, go on.
yes, it is true. Reduce the team size, reduce the budget. Oh, maybe my goal was too big. Or maybe it's unrealistic. It's too impractical. And those are the reason that I mean, I have done that for myself too. Maybe I was overdoing it. But the problem with that thinking is that I'm not when I'm in that mode, or when people are in that mode, because I can see it for myself and other people. What we are not seeing is that we are not seeing where the real problem is, and the easiest reason is to put it on we overset our goal, that we are not practical enough.
So what's the solution to that? If the goal should be a practical one, it should be small enough that you can see how you're going to do it. Isn't that equal boredom? Isn't that going
Yeah,
to be boring?
yeah, yes, it is. Because after a while it becomes a norm, and it becomes easy, and anything that's too easy, there's no challenge.
What's it like to talk to someone who's given up on their dreams, given up on their goals?
It's just very uninspiring. You talk to them, they say, "Oh yeah, it's okay. I'm happy. I'm contented. Oh, I don't really want anything more. I'm happy with where things are at." And well, essentially, it's giving up.
So they give up.
Yeah,
And what about the people you've talked to who have given up in this exact way, where they have these chronic health issues, for example, and it's very difficult not to talk about diabetes and stress
yeah,
and hypertension, which is high blood pressure. It's very difficult not to talk about these things in the context of
um,
stress.
yeah.
But how many people who are on the pathway with diabetes, like what people don't realize is that when you start to have out of control blood glucose, is that eventually your system won't be able to contain it, and then you're going to need medication to bring down that level of blood glucose. And then what happens is the medication works for a while, and then you need even more medication. Then that works for a while. Then you need even more medication until even the medication stops working. And then you have to take artificial insulin. And then you take increasing levels of artificial insulin until that stops working. And then you start to have vision problems, neuropathy in your extremities. And then, that's when people have the amputations and stuff. So these people know they're on this pathway, and
Kidney.
they know that there's something they need to do different. What is it that stops them from saying, if this is not a wake-up call, what is?
Well, it's basically giving up. That most people go for the easiest route. Easiest. When I say easiest route, right, quote unquote, it's not necessarily the easiest route, but the easiest to implement to manage the situation. Because managing situation is not solving a problem.
So then what is most people's root cause of the problem of stress? And we all know we cope with different situations differently because of how we have experienced it in the past and our capability and skill. But if there was one more common thing, what would it be?
From my experience and people I talk to, I would say that most people's biggest stress are people.
So you're saying that the challenges with relationships and dealing with people causes more people more stress than just about anything else.
Yeah, because you do it, people, you gotta do it feelings, right? You gotta do it emotion. If I can't handle my emotion, I don't want to talk to people, I don't want to face it, then I want to be on my own. And yes, some of us are more introvert than other people, but I'm not talking about that per se. I'm talking about, we all it doesn't matter which line, which profession we are in, we have to deal with people. And people challenge is such a big problem. How we communicate, how they communicate, how we feel about how they communicate, how they feel about how we communicate. And then some of us got to step on eggshells, and some people just don't respond. And I mean, it's just like there's so many different challenges, and some people are more direct, some people are very indirect, and you can't get a straight answer from them. And it's just, there are all sorts of people, and what do you do with all these different dynamic in place at home and at work? And what do you do when you're upset? Do you keep it to yourself? Do you talk to someone? Do you talk to the person you're upset with in a responsible way? Or you just, most people, especially in the Asian culture, we just feel suppressed. We don't say anything until when we can't handle it anymore, we just lash it out. To me, all these are people challenges.
So if that's true, then would that explain why there's such a boom in solopreneurs, where people don't want a team and they're going to go and do business on their own? They're a professional who then does a solo thing, and this is enabled a lot now with AI. So AI can empower them to work on their own. They don't need a team in order to make money and to do the work that they're doing.
Yeah.
So this is going to continue to boom.
Yeah. I think that's one of the contributing factor. The people not wanting to get married, the younger generation not wanting to get married, not wanting to have children, rather have a dog, and people not wanting to work with a corporate, or not wanting to run business with a team, and want to go solopreneur. So I think these are some of the this is one of the we don't have a statistics and data, but this is based on my observation, our observation, that people challenges contribute to all these decisions that people make in their life.
So let's look at some of the comments, shall we, Victoria? And then
Yeah.
we can continue the discussion of how people challenges causes stress, and then what can people do to alleviate the people challenge stress, or stress
Sure.
caused by the people challenges. How can we solve our people challenges?
Sure. Actually, last week in our previous session, right, someone commented about having a Q&A session at the end of the session, or maybe we stay around for a little bit more for Q&A session. If any one of you are interested, you can just comment on it and say yes, and we can stay around for a bit more for Q&A. So I just want to say that while I'm looking at the comment.
So I'll put a few of them up. Let's go back. Yeah. I start with this one. Okay, that's very good. The power of positive emotions lies in their ability to fuel enthusiasm and build confidence towards achieving goals. Yes, optimism is the key to unlocking amazing potential. That is true. And when you're under stress, your optimism will go down. You'll feel less optimistic. And to the degree that you are confident that you can solve the present time challenges, you will feel more optimistic. And when you feel like the present time challenges are unsolvable, or you don't know how to solve them, you will feel more negative towards it. So your attitude will become more negative based on the potential solution that you have. Yes. And that's why people can end up in a negative mindset. And we know that a negative mindset leads to actions that reinforce the negative outcome.
Yes. And at the same time, right, I want to say that, just to add to what Harrison has said, is our physical stress response and how our body respond to that can impact our ability to be optimistic. And at the same time, it is okay to acknowledge our fear, to acknowledge our worry, because if we don't acknowledge it, it's going to be suppressed underlying. It doesn't matter how much I tell myself to be positive, I just can't be positive. it's going to
You're
be,
saying positive thinking alone, just
it's
trying to think positive thoughts doesn't do
very
it.
tough. Yeah, it's just not sustainable.
You have to acknowledge the negative thoughts and the negative outcomes.
Yes.
And isn't that one of the challenges that people have if they are doing the positive thinking affirmations? If they do positive, 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 then it's out of balance. And
Yeah.
they're missing the other side of the yin and yang, which is to have harmony between the positive and negative, is where the flow is,
Yeah.
that it's not good or bad, is it?
Yeah. And going towards, some people can go a little bit Pollyanna, which can be harmful, which lead to some form of denial, which can numb us out from the reality. What if the threat is real? What if the loss is real? And we can't see it when we are being Pollyanna. Pollyanna meaning everything is positive.
Right. Let's look at the next one. The ability to handle emotions and stress effectively is a key aspect of navigating today's demanding and results-driven work schedule. Yep, it is. And anything you want to say about this one, Victoria?
Yeah, I would say that that's definitely an important factor. And I think having a purpose and the identify our being clear around our purpose in the area of our work can also help us handle the stress better. Because if you have a good reason in fact, if you have a great reason that's aligned to your value of what you stand as a human being, as a leader, as a professional, in the demand, if you have a demand work schedule, it becomes a lot easier to handle.
So if your purpose is clear, the stress is easier to handle because you have a
Oh,
reason for doing it.
yes, correct.
And so if you're doing it just for the money, then the money alone is not enough to drive through the different ups and downs that come with the stress.
Yes, correct. And then you feel like I feel a lot of people, it feels like blood money, that I got to sacrifice my time, my energy, my youth to exchange it for money. And okay, it's just temporary. I'm going to sacrifice now and I'll make enough money and I'll leave. But it doesn't happen that way. It never happened that way. Most people end up having a negative impact outcome from there as we get older, like the health issue and other issues that come in exchange for money, doing that, being overstressed from high demand job that you are not happy with in exchange for money. It can have a long-term cost, negative cost.
It reminds me, when you're talking about that, Victoria, of a client I had some time ago who was an anesthetist in a major hospital, and she hated her job. And her job was to put people to sleep for operations and procedures and to make sure that they were taken care of while they were in the operation and were pain-free and safe, etc. But she hated the job, and she was kind of numb about things. And she got paid very well for her role, but she didn't like it. And so she felt that her money was blood money, and she worked so hard and sacrificed to make the money that she had a lot of challenges spending money. She
Yeah,
couldn't spend any money because it's blood money. It represented giving part of her soul, her spirit, because she did work that she didn't like. And not there's anything wrong with the role of anesthetist, we need them, but this particular person didn't like it.
yeah,
Amazing, isn't it?
yeah.
Let's look at the next one. That's a great question. How do you make it more inspiring for people who have given up? Go, Victoria, go. How do you inspire people who've given up? How do you work with them?
Raymond, you want my straight up answer or not?
Go on, give us the real answer.
Stop trying. Forget about
You mean
people.
give up on them?
Well, it's not about giving up on them. Well, yes, to a certain extent. You have to allow them to go through their own process. If you try too hard, right, they're going to drag you down. That's part of the problem. I'm talking about people who really have given up, that they have no interest, they really have given up. If they but if they show some openness and want you to help them is one thing. But if they don't want your help and they already given up, the more you try, the more you annoy them, the more they annoy you. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes a lot of sense.
I've tried,
And
Raymond, I've tried so many. I don't know how many people I've tried with that over the last 20 over years. So, yes, I'm speaking from experience. It's
so
very,
when someone has
very
given up,
frustrating.
and you come along and you want to give them advice and you want to tell them they can do better and you want to encourage them, so this upsets them. They get angry with
Oh,
you.
they
That's
get,
why giving advice doesn't work.
yeah. And I think one of the good example that Harrison you used to use is to you try to save a hurt kitten, a kitten who is hurt, that is hurt, and you try to save the kitten. What it's going to do is going to scratch you because they are hurt and they are afraid that they'll be hurt again. And actually, the
Yeah.
people who give out are usually the people who have too much losses or who have too much pain, and they are too afraid to try again. So anytime you try to tell them that, oh, it's possible, you can do it, and try to motivate them on the outside, if there's no opening from them, it's going to be impossible.
So would you want to hire these people on your team, Victoria?
No. I've been there, done that. No, thank you.
So you definitely do not want to hire people who've given up.
No.
And let's say these people need the money. So they really need a job and they come to you for a job and they say, hey, Victor, I'll do whatever. You know, I love what you're doing. I'll do whatever you want. I'm so great at this role, whatever it is. And how do you determine that they've given up?
Well, it's a little bit hard at the beginning, right? You got to look at, of course, you go through the usual interview process to understand what they have done before, and to ask the right question to identify that. And we don't necessarily be, right all the time. So you just have to take some chance with some people who are, who show up and who wants to give it a shot. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And of course, reference from the previous, employer and all that.
I've got a simple question you can ask that can fast track that understanding if someone has given up. You ask them what their goals are and where they see themselves in a few years' time, and you listen to what they tell you, and you ask them for an example of when they had a goal and they didn't make it. How did they handle the failed goal? What did they do with it? Did they set a new goal? Did they acquire new skills? Did they keep going until they overcame it? Or did they give up on that goal and go and find something else?
Yeah,
And
you're right.
in their answer, you can tell whether they are the giving up kind, because if somebody has given up, then they have the signs of giving up on goals, and you can see how people dress, because somebody who's going places, who has a goal for their life, a goal for their career, and they want more, and they're growing, and they're eager, and they're learning, and they're motivated, and they're enthusiastic. You can see them coming, you can feel them, and you can tell. Then there's the ones who are very good at faking it, and by asking them more about their story, you can tell whether it's a short-term fake it till you make it thing, or whether they actually are that person.
Yeah, that's true.
So in terms of inspiring people who have given up, some people have temporarily given up because they had a temporary setback.
Yeah.
Like maybe they had some business failure, some career failure, or job loss, or something that was like an acute stressor or an acute event, but it's like a one-off within a series of successes. Then you can say, okay, so you've had this failure. What are you going to do to recover? And what can I do to help you recover? Do you want to recover, or do you want to give up on it? And if somebody is eager to recover and go for it, then you can help them. But you can't help someone who doesn't want to be helped. And that's why giving advice that is not asked for doesn't work. Because how many of you like to get unsolicited advice from people telling you, oh, you should do this, or handle your stress like that, or you should do this or that or the other? Most of us don't like getting advice that is unsolicited. Whereas if we go and ask someone and say, hey, I noticed you do a particularly good job of X, Y, and Z. Would you be willing to share with me how you do that? Oh, this is different. But, especially on LinkedIn here, dare I say, a lot of posts are posting about advice, giving advice, you should do this, you should do that, do like this, like that, like this, like that. Oh, this doesn't help anyone who's given up. The only thing that can help someone who's given up is by asking them. And, I use this analogy a lot in my own life. I remind myself, because sometimes we get gung-ho, eager, we really want to help in a situation, so we want to go straight at the front door, the front gate. And I like to study history, and I really love, like the Romans, history of the Romans, and because my family's from the UK, so like all the battles of knights and, the fairy tales. Here it is, Valentine's Day. We talk about, the knight in shining armor, the damsel in distress. So, castles look romantic with the flags flying and, the pretty drawbridge and the moat. And so if you're having this challenge with someone and you want to help them, the worst thing you can do is go and attack them at the front gate, because that's where the castle is the most heavily defended. And if you go around the back, they're going to see you coming. If you try and dig a tunnel, they're going to see you coming. If you try and swim the moat, they're going to see you coming. So even if you have great intentions, they're going to see it. So the best way to take a castle, the best way to help someone, is to invite them out and make it safe for them to come out of the castle, lower the drawbridge, and walk out and join you in front of the castle. And then communication is the best way to do that. Get in communication with them and talk to them and have a real two-way conversation, which in today's world is very unusual, isn't it? That we actually want to have a real relationship. We want to have a real conversation.
Even LinkedIn doesn't reward you for using AI to comment. That's right. or to post.
So the solution is to build a real relationship, is to actually give a fuck, not pretend like you care. You have a meeting with someone and they're sick and you say, oh, just let's reschedule it. And you don't ask them how they are. That's demonstrating a lack of caring, isn't it? So having a real conversation, actually giving a fuck, actually caring about people and getting in a conversation with them is the best way to do it. And if they don't want your help, don't force it on them, because that castle is very heavily defended at the front gate.
Raymond, did we answer your question? I don't know whether he's still here or not.
I don't know. Let's look at the next one, Victoria. Laugh out loud. That's so true. People stress each other out straight to the point. Oh, yes. Yes. So the solution here is communication. When you're having a people challenge, the solution is communication. And of course, different people need different types of communication. So we have to understand that when someone is under stress and maybe they've given up, and maybe they're under a chronic level of stress or an acute stressor, you have to know what mode that they're in. Maybe they've gotten used to it and their set point has changed from being warm and friendly and enthusiastic to being grouchy. I'm sure those of us here know people who at work are grouchy, right?
Yes.
So then someone who's grouchy needs a different type of communication than someone who's enthusiastic. Someone who's outright angry and hostile and short needs a different type of communication. And someone who is numb and given up needs a different type of communication. So understanding that different people need different things at different times. That means that we have to be master communicators. And managing our stress is a lot about communication and having a team. Because I find that when you have a team, that you can talk about the shared stresses, that the shared problems become less problems. And problems you keep to yourself grow. So you keep the problem to yourself, it grows. But when you share it, it reduces. Now, that's the opposite of what most of us think, because we think that sharing a problem, I didn't want to worry you, so I didn't tell you about this. And how many times does this happen, that people keep secrets from each other because they're worried that it will worry you? And this creates more low trust, distrust, and creates more communication problems because people can feel there's something there. What are you not telling me? And this creates more stress.
Yeah.
So these communication gaps increase the stress. Whereas if you can get on the same page and say, hey, here's what's going on, the more you share the problem, then it reduces for you and you feel less stress about it.
Agree. And I think that's opposite from a lot of companies are worried that their staff or their team member will bring their problem to work, and they'd rather not hear what's going on with them, and it end up being very stressful in a workplace where everyone has their own problem, and they don't know, they can't really share it because it's not encouraged. And we are not talking about whining and complaining here, because sharing is different from whining and complaining about something. If we have a problem, it can be as simple as I can talk to my fellow colleague and say, hey, I just had in case you see me being grouchy, I just had a fight with my husband this morning. And then everybody knows. It's like, oh, yeah, okay. And it's not personal.
And if you know what that does to someone, that they're not present at work, they tend to make more mistakes if they have this not acknowledged. And if you're the team leader or a team member with somebody who's clearly having some personal challenge, the most effective way is to ignore them? No. You would ask them and say, oh, you have this challenge. Is there anything I can do to help?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about it? Maybe we can take a break and go get a coffee, and you can share, if you're willing, what's going on. And these kind of empathetic conversations can alleviate a lot of stress. And then the person can be more present to the work that they're doing. If this is off the table, it gets dissipated. Because here's the thing about emotion. You ready for it? The number one thing about emotion is that it's an energy that has to flow. So when we bottle it up and we don't share, I find that if I don't share what's going on with me, I become like this pressure cooker of emotion, and it just boils up and gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse until it explodes on the wrong person, the wrong time. Whereas if I have someone I can talk to, that I can say, this thing is bothering me, just the fact that I can share what's bothering me with someone, and they can say, oh, I can understand that would bother me too. Boom, I automatically feel better because the other person has validated and acknowledged that this is a valid feeling, and they duplicated it. So I find that it's like this physics principle that no two things can occupy the same space at the same time. So if you have, my hands can't be in the same space. So if I've got an emotion here and someone duplicates it, poof, the emotion dissipates and my stress goes away. It reduces. It's amazing how it works.
It's interesting that works on a negative situation and painful emotion, right? Where
yes, it does.
It can't exist at the same time in the same place. But when it comes to joy, when you share joy, it gets multiplied. That's very interesting.
It is interesting because, like, the more joy someone has, the more joy will spread to other people. It's like if somebody starts laughing, then more people will start laughing, and then the laughter will spread. And if someone is in a fear-based mode, if they're feeling a lot of fear, that fear will also spread. So the positive will spread, the negative will spread. And how you stop the negative is by acknowledging it. So if you see a lot of, like in the tech business, a lot of people have been laid off right now. So a lot of the workplaces are insecure about the layoffs. And if there's more open conversation about it and people can acknowledge how they feel about it, then there'll be less fear running around, because when you don't address it, it just gets worse. So this all comes down to communication, doesn't it? That learning how to communicate that in a way that includes emotion.
Agree. Yes.
So should we look through a few more comments?
Actually, there's one question. Travis asked a question. What do you think are the ways to learn how to be empathetic to others? I'm asking because I think what we're really talking about is to have empathy for others in order to help. Are you able to pull up that question?
Where is it? Empathetic. This one?
Yeah.
Is empathy something you learn? Is it a skill that you learn, or is it a quality that you develop? Is it a skill that you learn or a quality you develop? Because when you learn a skill, it's like a skill is being able to do something, and by learning the techniques, you develop the skill. Whereas a quality, developing a quality is different from acquiring a skill. So a skill you will develop from practice, but a quality you will develop by playing out the negative and the positive side of it. So in order to develop, let's say, a virtue, empathy could be considered to be a virtue. Another virtue could be patience. So how do you develop patience? You develop patience by being impatient and then recognizing the cost of being impatient, not living up to your own ideal of being patient, and then working on developing that quality so you can be patient no matter what happens. And my opinion, and it's just my opinion here from my own experience, is that these knowing the difference between a skill and a quality can make a big difference on how you acquire it. So there's no technique to pretend like that you're empathetic. And a lot of people will get the technique down, but the person who they're exercising this empathy on don't feel that they're being empathized with. So the feeling is missing. So in order to communicate real, true empathy, it's something you have to feel. So it's a quality that you develop through doing its opposite and, being empathetic and being not empathetic.
Yeah. And I also want to add that it's
Yep.
also because it's an emotion. In order to empathize someone else, you gotta be able to feel, and the feeling has to come from within yourself. And I would say that from my own journey, learning more about my own emotion, to be able to empathize with other people, I also got to be able to empathize with my own self, and to be more accepting in general, and not be and to be safe, and not to criticize myself too much. So it's the same, it's similar to what you just say, right? To understand empathy, acceptance, the opposite of acceptance is criticism. So if I criticize myself, I'm not accepting myself. So then through the criticism, I can work towards more accepting of myself, which will allow me to be able to empathize with other people more.
What you're talking about is if you reject yourself.
Yeah, reject myself. Yes, correct.
So empathy, you can have too much empathy though, right?
Yeah, that you can have, yes. Too
So
much.
too much empathy, you're going to feel stressed. And too little empathy is where you can't connect to the feeling or the experience of what the other person is going through. So you have no feeling about them and their situation.
Yes.
Whereas too much, everything they're going through, you are feeling the same
Yes.
as if you were going through it. So on one hand, you have too little, and on the other hand, you have too much.
Yeah.
So to develop empathy as a quality means that you have to swing between too much and too little to find that golden mean, that optimal point in the middle where you have just the right balance of being able to feel what the other person's going through.
Yes.
And it's not a mental exercise, it's you literally feel it. And that's what makes empathy so unique, is that you're feeling what the other person's feeling, and then communicating to them that you can understand why they are the way they are and why they feel the way they do, because you can empathize with their situation. If you were in a similar situation, you would be similar. And then
Yeah.
the other person feels understood. And when someone feels understood, then you're off to the races with a real relationship, aren't you?
Yes.
Because if we're talking at each other, there's no real understanding, then is there any real communication if we're not understanding each other?
Yeah.
So, Victoria, do you find that the more you have developed your ability to communicate, the less stress you have?
Yeah. Well, communicate can be in many forms. Like writing is a good way to communicate. So like for me, when I when I write my content on LinkedIn, it helps me to express myself in a way that as if I'm talking to someone. So that helped a lot in my flowing of emotion, like you say, the energy flow while I'm writing. And of course, talking to people verbally, it also does help a lot. And being able to communicate really makes a big difference in minimizing or managing the stress a lot easier, especially if you can communicate your problem and your stress to someone who is safe for you to listen to. It is safe for you to talk to. It can make a big difference. And the when you feel safe, your vision start to open up, because less stress, then your vision start to open up, which means that you have more chances of solving the problem that trigger the stress, or causing the stress. And it's all connected to communication.
I bet you most people didn't think we'd be talking about communication in terms of stress, eh?
Yeah, it is actually. Yeah, I must say, I didn't think about that until you mention it. And as I'm sharing, it is true that being able to communicate what I want to say, what I want to communicate from my mind, from my heart, while being able to ask questions, being able to understand other people and myself, it really does make a difference in understanding, in minimizing my stress, or handling my stress that doesn't get that I used to suppress my stress because I had no idea what to do with it.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so shall we look at some more comments?
Yes.
Questions?
I saw a so I saw someone posting about wanting peace of mind when it comes to solving stress. Can't remember who, but I saw that as a comment. Would you like to talk about that? And I think Tuan also talked further around being empathetic. I can resonate about being empathetic, like the example you gave about someone sick and just say we are going to reschedule. It's better to go a step further and ask them how they are feeling. And
Well, if you do that, then you're going to empathize with them. They're going to feel understood by you, and the relationship is going to be built from these little interactions. And I think a lot of people's relationships are transactional. We're so focused on getting the result, getting the job done, making the money, getting the deal, that we forget that we're dealing with people, and people have feelings. And what's most important to most people are the relationships along the way.
yeah, true.
That the relationship trumps everything else. It's the
Yeah.
most important. And of course, we have to get the job done. We have to get the results. And how we get the results is really up to us, because if we do everything transactional based, then the result is temporary and we have to be putting in the effort to start over again all the time. So it's a short-term solution to a short-term problem. And that's a bit more of the roller coaster. It's very stressful to, like if you're a solopreneur and you have to be making money all the time, you have to be doing all the time, you can't really take a break. And when you're on vacation, the whole thing stops. This is no fun. That kind of self-employed is stressful, isn't it? And what if you get sick? What if you're a professional who makes their income from having to work, do a job like a doctor, like a lawyer? You don't make any money when you're not working. This is stressful on your health, because if you have a health challenge, then your income's going to stop.
Yep.
So what is peace of mind? Isn't true personal feeling of security, feeling secure in yourself, is that you can cope with whatever outcome happens, you can manage it. So if you look at the worst case scenario of any of these potential negative outcomes, and I refuse to have this one, or refuse to have that one, or refuse to have that one, or this is no good, and you have all these look like worst case scenarios, you're going to feel stressed just thinking about it.
Yes.
And if you have all these unsolved problems, what happens is you can forget about them in the moment, but then, you'll see someone who reminds you of that incomplete cycle with someone, and then you're back in a, disturbed state. And a lot of people are trigger happy because they have all these incomplete cycles and upsets that they sweep under the carpet and never really deal with them. So to have true peace of mind, it means that you're aware of all your problems.
Yeah.
And that you have consciously embarked on resolving them to the best of your ability. And the ones that you can't resolve, you determine inside yourself that you can accept whatever outcome happens with it, and you truly can accept it. And you think it through before it happens. This is how I do it. It helps me. I think through what could happen, and I say, can I live with that? And if the answer is no, I can't live with it, then I better get my ass in gear and I better do something to get a different outcome. And I better move heaven and earth if I can't live with it. Whereas most things, I'm like, oh, if that outcome happens, I can deal with it. The worst case scenario, I can deal with it. And over time, then my ability to handle negative outcomes has improved. I'll give you an example. What's the worst phone call you could ever have? The worst. Like in your nightmare, what's the worst phone call?
Well, for me, I can say for myself is someone died.
That would be the worst, right?
That's for me the worst, yes.
And then
share the news that, oh, your this and this just died.
What do you do with that? So like, if the worst thing to happen is somebody died or someone got a terminal illness and was going to die, and then you were in that process. So what happens if you have an incomplete relationship with a number of people? And let's say you have some upset on your side or some upset on their side, but it's incomplete. So you have these incomplete relationships, and then something happens to them and you don't have an opportunity to resolve it, to say you're sorry or to patch it up or whatnot. Isn't this stressful?
Yes.
So to me, having peace of mind is to look at all my relationships with all the people that I've in my life that are important to me, and then asking myself, is there any communication that I need to have with them to be in a good place with them? And even if it's acknowledging that we're never going to agree, because I've got some people in my life I don't agree with, we can't agree with each other. So these people, we can agree to disagree, but at least we're in agreement that with something. So if I can think of all these people that I have these incomplete communications with, and then I get busy and I have the communication, then when I get that phone call that I don't want to have, that someone has passed away, I don't have regret and remorse and guilt and shame that I have this incomplete communication with them. So this really changed my ability to be present and to have peace of mind, is knowing that I'm up to date with everybody important in my life. I've told the people that I love them. And I tell them every chance I can to let them know and make sure that they feel it all the way through, because I never know when's the last time I'm going to be able to say it. And if there's some misunderstanding between us, that I will do something to repair it while they're still around to do it, because when they're gone, it's too late. This gives me peace of mind. And I think if there's someone that you have an incomplete with, the sooner you go and clear it up, the more flow that you'll have, the more freedom that you'll have, the more joy you'll be able to tap into, and the better communicator you become, the better leader you become a happier person, you become more present in the moment, because a lot of us have trouble being present, and we have the other epidemic of diabetes, high blood pressure, and ADD. All these people say, oh, I'm ADD. And I think a lot of that, other than the technical diagnosis, is because we have all these incomplete things that distract us and we can't concentrate.
Interesting. It still goes back to communication. Taking the risk to communicate.
Commune,
say
right?
What you,
to commune.
Yeah, to say
to
what you
actually
need to
have
say.
actually have a relationship,
Yeah.
to actually talk to a person.
Yeah.
And doesn't that require, Victoria, talk and listen? So
Yeah.
we both get to talk and we listen to each other, and
Yeah.
then we get, that's what communicating is. Whereas a lot of people, they want to do all the talking or all the listening and they don't want to say anything. But
Yeah.
you have to say something. You have to participate two-way.
You know, interestingly, we have a question from Ahmed. He said, "What can I?" Hi, Ahmed. Sorry, I missed your question. What can I do to deal with individual who does not speak up his or her problem when you ask this person? They just say yes or no and not explaining the real problem. And it gives me stress in such condition. So how can I live with such people if they are if this person is my partner?
Huh?
Okay. So the
Where is
question,
that question? This is from who?
from Ahmed Osman from Kenya, if you if you search for most recent,
Yeah.
his will be under the first, like the fourth comment. Well, at least based on what I'm seeing right now, because I haven't updated. But the fourth or fifth or sixth comment, you'll be able to see it. That's a very good question. I think it's a common problem that people face, where essentially if you have a partner or a close working colleague or your team member, where you ask them about their problem, they only give you a one word answer, yes or no, and they don't tell you they don't actually share with you what's going on, and it's very stressful, right? We know
Yeah.
people like that.
People who give you a short answer, we all feel that they have more to say, but they're not willing to say it.
Yeah.
And they're withholding the communication. And probably what you'll notice is people who withhold communication withhold performance too. So they're underperforming, under delivering, and then you could say that you're not happy with them. And when you ask them if they're happy, they'll just say yes. And they won't tell you what they're really feeling or what they're really thinking. So they're withholding that knowledge from you because they think if you knew how they felt, that there might be a negative consequence to them.
Yes.
And so they don't say anything. My experience of these people is that you have to treat them a bit like a turtle. Why
Yeah.
a turtle? Because they hang out in their shell and they don't feel safe enough to tell you the truth. And if someone doesn't feel safe enough to tell you the truth, they're not going to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
So some way you have to get them to open up and feel safe in order to share. And usually that does not involve talking at them. It doesn't involve giving them advice. It doesn't involve
Forcing them.
what's that?
Doesn't involve forcing them. Why aren't you telling me your problem?
That's right. You can't force them. You can't make them. You can't hold a gun to their head. They still won't do it. So how do you get them to do it? Is that there's only one way to do it that I've ever seen work with everyone. And that is you have to open up first. You have to open up and share. And that's what I noticed. The new LinkedIn algorithm is one where if you post on LinkedIn giving advice, unless you're super famous and everybody fawns on every little piece of advice you give, for the rest of us mere mortals, we can't be giving advice. The algorithm will shut you down and not show your post to many people. Whereas if you open up and share your experiences and you share your story, it's the stories that connect us. So I think when someone won't speak up, you have to talk about yourself and you have to share in a way that creates a possibility for them to step into. That you talk to them about how you feel, how you are in this situation, and how it affects you and your experiences, and then you do it in a way that makes it safe for the other person to open up and share too. So you got to go first.
Yeah.
And
And
this
I
is a
think,
new skill, isn't it,
yeah,
Victoria, for many of us?
yes. And I think if it's your primary partner, you have to, one thing that I would support people to say to them is that, our relationship is important. and I value you. You mean a lot to me. Those are very good opening line, but you got to feel it now. You don't just say it in a. This is not a technique. You got to feel it. You got to. You got to. This is like, is the relationship important to you or not? If it's important to you, then you got to tell the other person. Don't say it because it's a.
Yep.
Don't use it as a technique.
So, hey, Victoria, we're over time. We're at
Yeah.
2:35 here in Singapore, so we
Yeah.
want to be wrapping up here. You wanted to know if people want to do a question and answer, if they have more questions. Has everybody asked the questions that they want to ask?
Well, we have a few questions along the way. Do we have any more questions? And we are in lag, so we got to wait a little bit. Do we have any questions that you really want to be answered? If not, we can touch base with you. You can text us on LinkedIn and have a chat. Easy.
So, Victoria, why are you doing the session? Like, what's your motivation? Are you trying to sell people something? Are you sharing something that's helped us, helped you? What are you doing?
Well, I'm passionate about the subject matter, and I do feel that many people can do with understanding stress, right, in a more objective way, and to have a solution to stress. And of course, we can help you with services and all that. At the same time, this session is really a sharing session that we feel passionate about, that we feel that more people can do more with, so that you see some possibility for yourself, that maybe, just maybe, there are things that is going on in your life. Doesn't matter how successful you are or not, you have a solution to it, and there's a way out of it. That's what I believe in.
So you obviously have services that you offer people, but this session's not about that. And you want to do more of these, right? Where in an hour and a half, we can only talk about so much to do with stress. And then that's very interrelated with leadership, because leadership itself is very stressful. But what most people don't realize is that it's less stressful to be in the lead than it is to be not in the lead, to be not leading. So they do studies of these chimpanzees and gorillas, which are very close relatives to ours genetic-wise. So we have 98% the same DNA as a chimpanzee, 98% the same DNA. And so what happens is that with these primates, when they are the alpha primate, their dopamine and serotonin levels go higher and their stress hormones go lower. And when they get deposed as the alpha individual in their troop, their stress hormones go up and their dopamine and serotonin level go down. And I think this is similar with human beings, is that when we're leading, stepping up and taking the lead, our stress hormones go down and our dopamine and serotonin go up. So this is directly connected to leadership.
Yeah, you do feel better when you're dominant, right? And you feel more in control, more at cost, less at the effect.
Right. So then you want to do another one of these next week, Victoria?
I think stress, there's so many things to talk about when it comes to stress. I would love to, if, people are interested. We can do another one. Next week is what date? 21st.
Well, we could pick another subject instead of, like last week. What did we discuss last week?
What did we discuss last week?
Power.
Power.
New power, old power.
Right. New power, old power.
In terms of stress, don't we feel more stress when we feel less powerful and more at effect? So part of having less stress is actually developing more power. This week we talked about stress. Next week we could talk about communication and relationship. How about that?
Sounds great to me.
And of course we can focus on the work relationships and work communication, but it can apply at home too.
Yeah.
And what about this time of day? Does it work for everyone to do it at 1 o'clock Singapore time, 1 to 2:30? We're already 10 minutes over, but
yeah,
Does it work at this time next week, or do you all prefer 7:30 p.m. Singapore time? Maybe you can do a poll on your page, Victoria, and see what time works for people.
Yeah, that'll be a lot easier. Because I noticed some people might be doing this during their lunchtime, and they got to leave at 2 p.m. and etc. or having lunch meeting. So it's, I don't know. We got to, I think we do a poll.
Okay.
Thank you, Jaya.
Alex says evening time would be great.
Evening time would be great. Okay. If you guys want to do your poll comment on the timing now, please do.
Works well either way. And you're happy to chat with people on your LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Excellent.
There's things to talk about.
So what I want to say in wrapping up, Victoria, is I want to say thank you, Victoria, for joining me on Valentine's Day for this session talking about stress. And thank you, everyone, for giving us your time and for spending it together here on LinkedIn Live. This is our second live session. And I look forward to getting to know you all more again. Over to you, Victoria.
Thank you. I also want to thank you for spending this time with me on during Valentine's Day to share with everyone. And thank you for co-hosting with me and doing most of the sharing. And I also want to thank everyone for being here, investing your time with us to listen to us and to participate and to ask questions and comment. It makes a difference when you participate like this. And also, I would say that since it's Valentine's Day today, please communicate more. Say to like Harrison say, tell your loved one, whoever it is, tell them you love them. And I know for Chinese, for Asian, it's a little bit more difficult, but this is, like Harrison said, you really don't know when. And if you can say it now, say it now. And if you feel awkward, you can say it in your own way. Don't have to use the word love. Can say, I value you. You're important to me, like I said just now. And whatever that you feel comfortable with as a start, so that the other person know how you feel about them, and I'm very sure they will reciprocate. Or if they are too uncomfortable to not say anything, it's okay. You give them some space. They will reciprocate in a matter of time. So bring more communication into your life, and to me that's a good takeaway for Valentine's Day. Communicate. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.